Okay, now that we've painted our piece with the Santa Fe color, 2 coats, and put on the clear and the black silk wax, we're going to do a little distressing and make this piece look old before we finish with our clear coat. And there's a couple of ways you can distress, and the nice thing is none of them involve a lot of muscle. It goes pretty easy. One of the easiest ways to do it to get a very subtle effect is use one of your regular Scotch sponges that has a cellulose sponge on one side and the green crunchy stuff on the other, and use just a little bit of water. Again, we don't want it to be super wet, just damp. And use that scratchy side and just do a little bit of rubbing, and it's going to come off in a nice subtle way. It doesn't look harsh and scratchy like it can sometimes if you use too rough of a sandpaper. And what I like to do when I distress is do the areas that would naturally get used. So on a piece of furniture, you do the corners, you do the legs. If you have a handle, you do underneath the handle where your fingers would constantly wear off the paint. And so here I'm going to do some of the corners where people would, over the years, have naturally bumped into this piece and gotten some of the paint off. And you don't want to do your distressing too symmetrical. You want it to look natural, just here and there. Just a little bit on the corners here. So that's wet distressing, and you can see that almost like pulverizes the paint and melts it, so you just get a nice soft look for it to come off. That's one way to do the distressing. If you wanted, and it has no dust, which is good. So again, you can do this in the house with a tarp and not have to worry about getting dust all over the place. People ask about using Rotary Sanders to distress, and you can do that. We have a piece here. And you want to be sure, if you are going to use a mechanical sander, that you use a rotary one so that you don't get lines. But for me, personally, this goes just too fast. I take too much off, and whoops, before I know it, I'm way too distressed. So I tend to like to do it by hand. And then I have more control over it. Another way you can do it is to use a sanding block or sandpaper, and 60 to 80 grit will take off the paint for you, but you're going to find it gives you a different look. And the best way to do this is just experiment and try some pieces with the wet sanding and try some pieces with the regular sandpaper in 60 or 80 grit, and you're going to see it goes really fast, but it's not quite as soft of a look. It's a little bit more harsh than if you do the wet sanding. And after you've gotten it distressed, I'm probably going to do just a little bit more here. I like to make it look like it's been around a while. Wipe it off. And then some nice ways to finish it is to use, now I've cut this up, these come in bigger sheets, but Vintage Market Design sells this synthetic steel wool, and Edward says this is how you get the baby butt finish. So if you want a really smooth piece of furniture that everybody's going to want to touch, this is what you use. It doesn't sand, it just smooths. So you're going to go over what you've already got on here and just buff it. And you're going to find, again, it doesn't change the color, but it just gives it that nice patina, like a piece that's been around for a while and has had a lot of hands touching it over the years, and it just is mellow looking. And these little steps are the things that will make the difference between a piece of just painted furniture and something that looks professionally done. And again, you don't need to go with the grain, just give it a nice buff overall. And nice and smooth. No bumps. Nothing to catch the light when we put our clear coat on. And if you don't have this, another way you can do it is the carbon sandpaper. And this is like an 800 grit. There's hardly any grit to this at all. And again, all this would do is, if you were to go over your piece, is just give it a nice smoothness. Take off any little bumps. If you happen to have a little bit of dust or grit or something that got in there, it's going to help take it off and just give you a nice, beautiful surface, so when you clear coat, there's not going to be anything in there that's going to catch the light and make it look uneven. And that's it for distressing.